In sex, we want this whole human experience with our partners. We want to feel beauty, we want to feel connection, we want to feel love, we want to feel intimacy, we want to feel a sense of soulful nourishment.
Welcome back to the LaCroix Show. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today. For 2 decades, Alexey Welsh has personally guided thousands of individuals and couples to transform their sex life so they can have greater love, richness, well-being, soulful fulfillment, wellness, life energy, spiritual depth, and sustainable ever-growing sexual relationships. He brings his wisdom and his knowledge as a sex author, sex educator, sex coach, and alternative sex therapist. Welcome to my little YouTube channel and show, Alexey.
Thank you for inviting me.
In my exploration and pursuit of deepening my knowledge around sexuality, relationship, and intimacy, came across your channel, which I absolutely love because I think you bring such a unique and needed conversations around sexuality and intimacy and love and relationship that's not often heard in our mainstream culture. And that's why I wanted to go a little deeper with you and ask you more about your own journey and the work that you're doing and some of the perspectives so that my audience can learn from you. But before we go there, I like to start my conversations with people asking about something from their childhood or the family of origin, something from their early years. And I'm wondering if anything comes to mind for you.
My interest in spiritual practices, spiritual teachings in my early teens created a background for my first meeting with sex. For me, it was a very profound experience, and profound in the experience of sex in general, I suppose, as a phenomenon, as a life experience that we have. And I was immediately fascinated by that and sort of the connection that it might have to different themes in spirituality that I had been exposed to before.
Was there something particular about your childhood or your life that might have influenced that?
The fact that I lost my speech in my early teens. I spent 3 years without being able to speak. And I think my experiences, became a bit more inward. And maybe that kind of created that connection for me when I first experienced sex. Yeah.
Did you know at that point that you wanted to work in the realm of sexuality, or were you just pulled towards it and fascinated by it?
I really wanted to explore it completely and understand it. And I felt a discrepancy between what is normally understood by sex and how sex was presented and the depth of what sex really is as an experience. So I did a lot of personal exploration at that stage and a lot of, learning and studying and training in conscious sexuality. And it's through personal practice that then I decided that this is something that I would like to research further and to help people with.
You talk about sexual techniques in ways that are very outside the box compared with what our culture really talks about. How to please her, deepening into sexuality, into supporting people and having more connected, intimate lives in relationship. Do you share that experience that what you're bringing is very different from the mainstream?
Yeah, I would agree. So not because I would like to be different,
right?
But because I genuinely believe that, there is a reality that is quite different from what the mainstream presents in sex that would be very helpful and liberating for all of us, if we practice sex that way. And I believe that what the mainstream vision of sex is quite restrictive and impoverishes our experience and makes people, unnecessarily anxious and stressed and performative where they don't need to be. Sexual technique is important. Obviously, sex is a very kind of practical, applied thing. But the biggest transformation is the mindset. It's sort of breaking down ideas in your head. They make the biggest change always, which is why I, focus on that a lot as well.
I want to highlight that you said performative, because that's one of the things I experience when I look at mainstream ideas about sexuality and in my own personal interactions with people around topics around intimacy and sexuality, is that I feel that we have been taken down a pathway that focuses so much on the performative aspect of sexuality, also on orgasm as a central point. There's so much talk in the mainstream sexual culture and conversations focusing on her orgasm. And I think that's led us in a wrong direction. And we know why that's happened, because there has been this whole thing about the orgasm gap between men and women. But I think that hyper focus on it has been really destructive to our actual experience in terms of pleasure. And I really appreciate that you talk about that and suggest that people think about how they're interacting sexually outside of that as a primary focus. And that's just one example of the ways that you're bringing things differently. You and I have had conversations as content creators, and some of the challenges bringing topics that maybe aren't popular.
I actually find it very difficult, because the things that I would like to share with people, I genuinely would like to share them, because I think their experience is going to be much better if they make those changes. But it does go against some of the kind of more accepted mainstream concepts. So when you make content, obviously the challenge is that, first of all, people look for particular ideas that are already widespread, particular things that they should be doing in sex. And if you are making content that is not covering, not jumping on that wagon, then it's harder. There is also a certain kind of affirmation by numbers, which is, if a particular idea in sexuality has been retweeted enough times on social media, it becomes the reality about how sex works. So that's quite challenging to work against, because essentially people learn from, social media. And when something is repeated enough times, then this is considered to be sort of, this is how sex is. And then, of course, they implement it in their life. And then the reality might be life imitating art in a way. So that can be a challenge as well, to say something counter to that, which may sound like, you don't really know how sex works, because everybody has already stated how sex works,
Everybody's already in agreement. So if you bring something different, they think automatically you must be on the outside.
Don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, I really do think that's why I really wanted to feature you, because I know from my own experience, what you speak about really is in line with the things that I feel are misaligned in our culture and the things that I feel are missing. So in addition to the focus, the hyper focus, the over focus on orgasm, what are some of the other things that you think are outside the box, and the things that are a little bit edgy, the things that people might jump on you for saying?
The most prominent, apart from the belief that the orgasm is the most important thing in sex, is, for example, that sex has to be passionate, that sex has to be exciting. That's another thing that I would really challenge, that this makes the best sex. That intensity is the most important quality of sex. Fundamentally, actually, I believe that the overarching umbrella belief in our culture about sexuality is that intensity makes good sex. So actually all the other ones, like passion and orgasm and everything, are sort of sub types of that. That's the most important belief to relax, that because then you will open a much broader range of experiences and much more fulfilling experiences.
I don't have a moral judgment against pornography, but I do have a practical judgment, because I think that a lot of the misunderstanding, the focus on not only on orgasm, but on intensity and passion and performativeness, so much comes from the fact that recently people have been raised up sexually on pornography and thinking that it is the information about the way sex is supposed to look and feel and sound. And so it's not surprising to me that you're fighting against the idea of good sex as being intense and passionate, because that's what we're seeing. That's what people see when they're looking at the hyper extreme versions or like visualizations of it.
Importantly, though, I don't dismiss it. I don't like to be exclusive. I don't like to say, okay, no, that's not good sex. I like adding to it, So
love that.
I think all those kinds of sex are wonderful, and it's really nice to have them. But there is just more to have that you can add to your repertoire.
You talk about the different types of orgasms inside the vagina and the way to touch and the different ways to touch, the A spot information and G spot information. And I think that is some subtlety of technical understanding that is very rarely known in our culture.
We need to see the vagina less as a kind of panel that you have to stimulate with the buttons to poke and to press, to
Yeah.
create a sensation of pleasure. I think we have to see the vagina and the rest of the body as a live space, and every physical technique, in my opinion, has a emotional and mental layer to it, which changes it or activates it or deactivates it. And I think the vagina particularly is a very sentient place for a woman. It's very much unlike, any other part in her body. But I think the vagina is the most emotionally connected and the most holistic place really in a woman's body. And there has to be this not just the physical interaction, but also the conversation through it and the feeling that we are speaking with, not just from the person who might be touching it, but I think importantly also women themselves have had very little guidance on how to connect with their own vagina during sex to empower the sexual energy with it, how to be basically making love with the vagina and through the vagina, which I think is sort of one of the more unexplored parts of that interaction. It's a good example also to talk about, the subtleties that you mentioned, the kind of moving away from intensity. I think very interesting things happen, especially in the vagina, when you stop just kind of, stimulating it or hacking at it or whatever people do, and you create a much more nuanced and subtle interaction. You can even experience sexual energy in the vagina in stillness. So there is just that energetic transmission that can be happening through just the connection that you're creating there. There can be a lot of subtle energies you can create in the vagina without a lot of stimulation, with very minimal movement. If you wanted to have a more intense orgasmic experience, it would be a part of it. It would be built sort of on that foundation.
You are grappling for yourself between bringing specific technical information to your channel and what you really want, as far as I'm getting, and you can speak to this, is a deepening and understanding of the more holistic aspects of what's possible in sexuality.
Everything is a technique in sex in a way. So I don't mean by this only physical technique. For me, emotional techniques are just as a technique, just as much a technique. Your ability to be present, to be mindful in your body is a technique in a way. Your ability to let go is a technique. Your ability to send love or to receive love in a way is a technique. We can create really powerful things with our intention and our feeling and our mind and our direction of our mind as a technique. I just think that we need to integrate that into the physical technique in sex, because where I have a disagreement is kind of the vision that you're just going to rub the body and it's going to feel something. Even if the technique is good, technically, you're touching the right place with the right pacing, you're probably going to get either no effect or, a much more limited effect. At the same time, I just always make clear that it's not enough to get by just knowing how to touch the body. You have to also include the other aspects into it, how you're feeling things, how you're focusing on things, where you're directing them, what you're doing with sexual energy, and your mindset, I think, is really important, because the discrepancy that we have at the moment is we are still looking at sex, sexual body as a physical, physiological thing. And I think it's been missed that, well, we are no longer as human beings in the 21st century, we are no longer just kind of trying to mine our physiology or just following our physiology or just, happy with a physical sensation in the body. In sex, we want this whole human experience with our partners. We don't want to just be, poked in a particular place and feel a sensation. We want to feel beauty. We want to feel connection. We want to feel love. We want to feel intimacy. We want to feel a sense of soulful nourishment. We want to feel it all through the body. And I think it's just unrealistic of us to expect to have that human experience by, stimulating something clockwise.
Yeah.
And relieving a nerve. To have that human experience that we are looking for, we need to invest that experience into this moment. We need to kind of be there and interact on all those different layers. So that's what I mean by technique, essentially.
You say that this is what people need and what people want. And I know that you've said to me before that you'll share an idea about what your experience is that is missing for women. And sometimes women will say, what are you talking about? You're speaking for me. And I think that's partly because as a culture, not just in sex, but in so many different ways, we have been distanced from the actual experience in ourselves. We've almost forgotten. We have to reclaim
I
pleasure.
agree with you that we are distanced. I think I probably would just disagree that we have forgotten, because I see it more as something that we never had a chance to develop.
Mm,
Um, I don't think that, some thousands of years ago we were having like, really expansive tantric sex.
got it.
Um,
I think you're right. I'm going with you.
I see it as basically, for me, sex is the unloved child of humanity, been like locked away, without any education because it's a filthy one. And and now it has grown into an adult, and now it's a little bit twisted because of it. It's a really complex experience. First of all, it's a really powerful experience, and it's a really important experience. And I think it's quite naive to think that we can sort of understand it with 5 best sex tips from Cosmopolitan. So I think it is our future to to come more into this experience. It's not something we have forgotten from the past. I think hopefully there's going to be more exploration, more development in this area. It's just something we haven't done yet. At the same time, there are sort of, malicious forces that are competing with that.
Maybe by way of exploring what's possible and what you bring from the vast years of work that you've done in this area, you can share a little bit about how you work with people. I know you work with men, women, and couples. Is there something that you can share about how this the information that you bring to your YouTube channel shows up in your regular practice?
I do coaching, consulting like this. I do workshops for people who want to experience, a real relationship in sex, a real connection. It's people for who it's important um, for who sex is about love and intimacy and connection and enrichment in a soulful way. I guess where I don't have a lot to offer is when people treat sex in a purely kind of consumerist way, or they just want it as a form of entertainment, and that's where maybe my work is not so aligned to that. Yeah.
So would it be an example of someone that you would work with, or a couple that you would work with, who knows that there's more opportunity for depth, or who's feeling like they're committed to their relationship and have a lot of love between them, but they're feeling like they want to go deeper in terms of how they're experiencing sexuality? Is
Yeah,
that an
yeah.
example?
I think it fits in with what we were talking before. In their relationship, what's really important is the feeling of, love and enrichment and connection. But then in sex, what's really important is, to get a relief, or, or to feel some kind of intensity. It's quite easy actually for people to connect with a much more fulfilling experience of sex if they almost as if they try to imagine, and it's not even imagination, it's reality, that sex is kind of, it's a part of their relationship, and therefore it is about the same things as their relationship is about, really, and it's an extension of their relationship, and really it should reflect the values that they have about each other and about their relationship.
So they're not separate from each other, the relationship and their sexuality and their emotional
Exactly, yeah,
connection.
because I think actually one of the very widespread ideas at the moment is that sex is different from relationship, or sex is not the same as love, or when it comes to sex, things are different. I think it's actually really unhelpful and damaging to people, if anything, to imagine that sex works on some other different laws that are not from this universe. I mean, sex actually kind of works on the same principles and in the same way, and it exists in our world, and in the same way, it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be sort of, the way it works is common sense.
Do you find that when you're working with people, you're also working with them on more general communication, or are you working with them more holistically in terms of relationship and connection?
I don't work on the relationship because I think there's a lot more that's involved in a relationship. There's, people's um, people's histories and aspirations and goals in life, and family or cohabitation and things like this. Okay, so the way I would phrase it is, it's a different medium. It's a different medium for the same connection. Yeah. So sex is just about this energy in the moment that people feel with each other. So for that reason, I work with them only on that, because I think it's actually useful to separate it from other things that are happening in their relationship, because it just makes it easier for people to create that connection in sex. And it creates a culture where people commit their full attention and their full presence to this energy that is flowing between them in that moment, rather than kind of believing that other things, a million other things, who didn't take the rubbish out, etc., affects it. So for that reason, yeah, I mean,
So it's separate in the sense that it's a practice space, but it's not separate from the whole, like, of their relationship itself. Yeah. We talked a little bit about your channel, and what I really want is for people to go and watch your content, because I think you do bring such important information. But I know that you have changed your channel, and in our conversations as fellow content creators, we've talked about the fact that what you're bringing in terms of topic areas, sometimes you've wanted to shift a little bit here. So if people do go and follow your YouTube channel now, or follow you on Instagram, what kind of information could they be expecting to find right now, and where are you taking your channel?
I have my programs through which I teach the whole practice. So the content that I put out on Instagram and YouTube are a window to that, but not the entire practice. I would like to change what we consider important in sexuality, what we want to nurture and to emphasize in our sex lives. I would like to be explaining more the different experiences that people could have, and the principles on which sexual energy works.
Yeah, well, I want everyone to go and watch your channel, and I will put information and links in the show notes to both your Instagram channel and also your YouTube channel. I'm really grateful for you, for the content that you bring. I'm really grateful that you've been here today and that I get a chance to highlight the work that you're doing, and you're thinking about it, and we'll send people over there. So thank you for what you bring to the world.
Thank you, Lisa. A pleasure.
If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and push that notification button so you can know about it when I publish a new episode. And in the meantime, you might find one of these videos of interest. We'll see you next time.